So last video I introduced you to the spreadsheet. Now we're going to start using the spreadsheet. Remember, I put in 60% and 40%, 60% large cap, 40% fixed income. I'm going to assume that my client that is their starting portfolio. 60% in large cap, 40% in fixed income. Not very well diversified, but might actually be good, because then when you write your paper, your recommendation will show a lot of value added versus someone who's very well diversified to start with. So we're going to assume that's where my client started with. So when you first start at it, you just type in whatever you think your client had to start with. You don't have to do anything with the target risk or the constraints for that. We're just setting up our client. And so after we do that, we're going to go to the second sheet called Efficient Frontier Output. I'm going to click on that, or EF Output. And you'll notice that whatever is on the EF model page is what comes over to the second line of this sheet. So in B2, you notice the 9.21% risk. If you go back to the EF model, that is the risk of this portfolio. The return, 6.6%. And there's that 60-40 allocation. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to come down to B5. I'm going to highlight B5 through I5, and then just kind of take it with my mouse, highlight all the way down, and then I'm going to hit the delete key. So I delete what was there before, because this is your model. And then I'm going to go up to B2. I'm going to click on it and highlight it with the mouse so that it's all highlighted. I'm going to right click and copy, and then I'm going to come down to B5 and right click, and you want the one with the numbers on it. We want to paste it special as values. So I went to B5, right click, and under the paste options I pasted the one that says values, and that gives me the values here. If you paste the formula, you'd be in trouble because it will be referencing the wrong area. So we wanted to actually paste numbers here. So that gives me my first point. This is my client, that's the current. What we're going to do is fill in the rest of this, and I'll show you how to do that step by step. So let's go back to the EF model. And what we're going to do here is we want to find a good starting point for our Efficient Frontier, a low risk portfolio. So we'll be building the Efficient Frontier point by point. And so we'll change our target risk in E15 to 4%. 4% is about as low as you can go. Remember that your lowest risk asset class was 3.5% on fixed income. So that's about 4% is a good starting point. So we'll do 4%. And now we're going to run Solver. To run Solver, you'll notice at the top of Excel these different sections you can click on. If you click on Data, hopefully there will be a Solver button already over to the far right, already loaded. But if not, all you need to do is come over to the far left, click on the word File, and then go down to the word Options. And then on the left it says Add-ins, click on Add-ins. And then at the bottom it says Excel add-ins. You can click Go, and just make sure Solver add-in is there. I recommend just click all four. Definitely the very top one, Analysis Toolpack and Solver add-in, are extremely important, but I would just click all four. Click OK. And so now we can click on the Solver button. Solver is very, very, very powerful. It's somewhat self-explanatory, I think, but if you look at it, it says we want to take whatever's in cell B22. Right now that's my return. We want to maximize our return. Well, that makes sense. We want to get the highest return we can get by changing the allocation to the different asset classes, changing cells B15 through B20. Subject to, here's the constraints. The first three constraints simply say we wanted to add it to 100%. After that, we want to make sure that the risk that it gives us equals the risk that we have in our target. And then the other four are those other constraints. The constraint for max high yield, emerging markets, non-US stocks, max and min. So those are the other constraints. You can see if you click on the add button or the change button, you could add and or change your constraints very easily. It's very straightforward. But Excel Solver is set to go. You do not have to change anything. As long as you typed in the constraints that you wanted over here, it's ready to run. So you can just click the word Solve. And you'll notice that it's actually running over here. It said it could not find a solution. Well, that'll happen sometimes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give it another starting point. I'm going to do, say, 10% in large cap, 0, 0, 0. I'm going to do 90% in fixed income and 0% in high yield. See, my risk is a little bit low, so I'll try 20 and 80. I want to get something that's somewhat close to 4%. You can see with that, that's close to 4%. So I'm going to click on Solver again. Sometimes it just gets confused. You got to give it a new starting point. So it's trying again. This time it says it converged to a solution. Let's try a few more times, maybe just one more time. I'll show you the word that you want. You do not want the word converge. There's the word you want, found. So it found the solution. What it's telling you is at a 4% risk level, you can see how I got exactly at 4%. The best return you can get on this portfolio is 5.31%. So what we're going to do is go back to the EF output sheet, go to B2, highlight that whole section, right-click the copy, and come down to the next line down, line 6, right-click, and paste. And we're just going to keep doing that. I'm going to go back to EF model, and instead of 4%, I'm going to run 4.5%. So generally what you will do is when you're at low risk levels, run maybe every 0.5. So do 4%, 4.5%, 5%. And then once you get to, say, 7%, you can start increasing by 1%. And so I'll run solver, solve. When it clicks, it says that it found, so that's good. I'll say OK. I'll go back to the output, highlight that, right click and copy, come down to the next empty line, right click and paste. We'll go back. Now we'll run 5%. Same thing again. Solver, solve, make sure it can find the solution. It did. Say OK. Go back to the output, highlight, right click, copy, right click, paste. So we just keep filling it in. Let's try 5.5%. Solver, solve. You notice it gets going pretty fast at this point. So just keep copying and pasting down. Let's do 6%. That's good. So I got my 6%. And you'll notice as we go up in risk, our expected return also goes up. So at 4% risk, we had a 5.31 expected return. At 6% risk, it's 5.98. So let's try 6.5%. So that worked very, very well. Copy it down. Now at this point, I'm going to want to go to 7%. I'm going to just do it 1% increments. So from 7%, I'll go instead of 7 to 7.5. I'm going to do 7%, 8%, and 9%. And then I'll show you something we'll do special at 9%. Found the solution. That's good. You can get going pretty fast. Now, if some of you are familiar with macros, I could have obviously written a macro to do this part, but given the difference between machines, it's a little bit dangerous to build macros for a whole class to use. So we're doing it somewhat manually, but I think that's good because you can actually see the efficient frontier slowly building over time. So here I'm up at 8%. It found the solution. Let's take 8%. And I'll copy that down and paste it as values. And what you'll notice, if you go over to the right side of the spreadsheet of this sheet, the efficient frontier, you're starting to build it. It's starting to grow. That red dot is your current portfolio. That's where your client is right now. And we're slowly adding points to build in the efficient frontier. So now let's try 9%. And do solver and solve. Found the solution. Copy that down. Now, You notice that my client started at 9.21% risk, and I'm now at 9%. So what I want to do is a special case. Instead of going to 10%, I want to run a scenario that's exactly equal to what my client did. I want exactly that risk level. So I go to B5 and I right click and I copy that. Then I go back to the EF model, go to the target risk, right click and click on the 1, 2, 3 again, so you paste it as value. So now my target risk is 9.21. So I want to make that as a special case because that's where clients started. Now it may be a little different for you depending on where your client started, which point comes at which time, but for me it worked out. So it was right when I was at this green section. And so you can see here's my 9.21. I'll copy that, bring it down. Now why is this section green? The reason I highlighted this in green is you'll notice over on the Efficient Frontier model that whatever's in the green is going to give you a blue box. So whatever's on the current is going to give you the red diamond. Whatever's in the green is going to be blue. So if your customer, if your recommendation is not this point, you'll have to edit the chart so it's actually referencing which point you want it to show as your recommendation. But it's set up to do that in the green. If you want to keep it with the green, you can actually put whatever your recommendation is in green, and then everything else can just go around. It doesn't necessarily have to be in order. It still works pretty well, so you'll be all right. But that's just the way I've set it up. All right, I'm going to do 10% now, and then after this, I'll move a whole lot faster. So 10%. Found the solution. Paste that, and now I'm going to go really fast. I'm going to do. I suggest you still go by 1%, but I'm going to speed it up just for the sake of this video. I'm going to do 12.5%, and hopefully it will work. It did. So there's 12.5%. Copy that down, and then I'm going to do one more point. I'm going to do 15%, and that'll be my last one. Hopefully it will run okay. If you get that it cannot find a solution, especially at the very lowest points and the very highest points, try a different allocation. Just give it new points. Try to key in something to get you close to the risk you're trying to target. And if you try and just cannot get it, it may be that the point is not possible. You can always email your file to me, and I can see if I can find a solution. But it found 15%. I'm going to make that my last point. I'm going to copy that, bring it down. And there we have our Efficient Frontier. If you go over to the right now, you'll see that I've got the graph all set up. So all I'm going to do is, move these words down. So there's my recommended allocation. You just click on them, move them, get the little star, and you got that graph. My graph goes up higher than I need it, so I can always click on the right and format the axis. And so instead of going to 18%, I may just have it go, since I'm going to 15, I'll just reset it there. And then I got the entire thing filled in. You'll notice down below, I've got a pie chart for my recommended allocation and a pie chart for my current. I'll show you how to handle those in the next video.